Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. So thanks for joining. We are going to be talking about an issue that probably has affected everyone. I know that I've had situations, difficult situations, more than one time at many different levels, and I'm sure we all have been there. Or chances are that if you are um, an advisor for any of the publications, in particular the yearbook, you at some point, chances are you will be in a difficult situation. So this roundtable, more than anything, is intended to be a conversation, a place where we can exchange ideas as to whether we have encountered a situation that we are not necessarily sure how to handle, or perhaps we just want to go ahead and give advice to someone else. I know that at least for me, I've been teaching for, I've been advising the yearbook for 13 years, and I've had everything from upset parents calling me on a Friday night at 10 o'clock, very upset because their kid did not get the editorial position that they were hoping she would get. They take it very, very personal, and they think it's going to be the end of their college application process. And I've also had situations where parents call me because one of their kids was not included in the index in the yearbook. So anything that we might not necessarily think it's a big deal to either parents or students or even the administration. So some of the things that I think we would like to discuss are things that affect students because they are chances being affected by some of the decisions that we make, whether it's the positions that they get, the grades that they receive, or the grades that they were expecting they would be getting, how to deal with situations where we know that we want the work to be turned in on time and the kids are not doing that. So how do we approach them? As I mentioned earlier, we deal many times with parents who are upset because their kids did not get the position that they were hoping for, or again, also because the grade was not what they were expecting. And students who were included in the yearbook, but there are mistakes because of misspelling or the wrong picture, or maybe they were omitted completely from the book. It happens. And also the administration, just we might want to discuss a little bit about how much the administration stands behind us, and do you have a plan with them in case you encounter a difficult situation. So I would love to be able to hear from you guys. Would love to be able to perhaps spend like 15 minutes or so talking a little bit about the different situations that you have encountered, and perhaps after that go into breakout rooms where in smaller groups we can discuss ways of handling difficult situations. We've all been there. Chances are that a difficult situation that you have encountered, someone else has already encountered that. So it's always very, very helpful knowing how other people have dealt with situations like this. So anyone has had a situation that they might need some help with, or anyone who could start the conversation?
Oh, you better believe it. You better believe it. I was in a situation, Kevin Tatum, I used to be at the Tasker Cedar High School in Houston, Texas. Now I'm at Terry High School.
Also
And
in Houston?
yes, we had a situation a couple of years ago where we had a disgruntled employee who was just looking for anybody to lash out at because she got transferred from our building to another one. So at the time, our orchestra teacher just was not one. I would use him as an example of a person that do not reply to anything. So we would constantly beg. We was already doing a chronological book, so we would constantly beg for coverage. What are you guys doing? What is this? Give us something. Please give us anything so we can show up and get covered. So his parents chewed his behind out after the yearbook came in. And basically, he threw us under the bus by basically saying, well, I've never heard from the yearbook program. They didn't do anything for us this year. They don't even like fine arts. First of all, I used to be a band director for 6 years. So you're not going to tell me that I don't like fine arts. So the mom sent me a chain of emails. I mean, I'm talking, she even called me like at 1 o'clock in the morning, one early Saturday morning. I had to explain to my wife, I am not cheating with this woman. I mean, 1 a.m. So right here, I was tripping. And she literally, I mean, she sent me like a 2-page email, told me I wasn't worthy of my job. I didn't know what I was doing. The awards that we won for the program were all false. She had looked me up and thought I had a felony. And I mean, it was horrible. So what I did was I sent all those emails and I attached my principal, my immediate principal, and where she was at, the school she was at. And my principal hit me back and said, Kevin, say no more. Don't worry about it. I don't know what my principal said to her, but her principal knocked on my door during my planning period and said, I just wanted to come personally apologize. You won't have to worry about her ever again. Matter of fact, I won't have to worry about her ever again because yesterday was the last day she'll be working at the school. I mean, she tried to rip me a new one. And then the orchestra director came down and had to apologize because the principal marched him down to my classroom and was like, do you realize what you just did to this man in this program? You literally, and then put it out there in the community to where they was even talking about us on the social media sites for the yearbook program is terrible. They don't think about kids. They don't like kids and they don't like fine arts. And it's all about, I mean, it was a fiasco. So I understand what you're saying. One thing about being a yearbook advisor, you and your students better have some thick skin because it's not about if, it's when it's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. And I think key is to have a good relationship with the administration because something will happen at some point. So the better communication you have with your administration from the very beginning, the easier it'll be for them and for you. I usually, whenever I assign positions, I know that I will be getting emails or phone calls from parents. So I usually, before I even send out an email with the positions, I sit with the head of my division and my department head, and I share the list of the positions and parents who might be contacting them, because chances are that at that point, I already know who are the parents who will not be happy. So I give a heads up to my administration because in some cases I know for sure that they will be contacting them. So if you can go ahead and do some behind the scenes work and give a heads up to your administration ahead of time, that'll be fantastic. I had a situation once where I was at the end of the year, I hand out awards to mostly my seniors and my editors. And there was one year where one of my editors just did not do the work that was expected of her. So she did not get an award. It's not that I did not give her an award. Truly, she did not deserve an award. So the parent was extremely upset. And the mom sent me a horrible, horrible, horrible email. I was just flabbergasted. I just couldn't believe it. So I spent some time organizing my thoughts because I wanted to reply and explain myself. And before I sent it out, I went to the head of school. I didn't necessarily just go to my division head. I went to the head of school because I wanted to make sure that she would know what's happening and she might have some suggestions as to how to handle it. I probably spent an hour and a half drafting my email. I just wanted her to read it because I knew that she was going to be hearing back from the parent. She read it and she said, Anna, do me a favor, don't send your email. I wasn't sure why she wouldn't want me to send the email. And she said, if you send the email back, it means that you are acknowledging her and that you agree with replying to her. this email does not merit a reply. The fact that I'm telling you not to answer the email, the fact that you're not answering, that's your answer. No email back, that's your answer. So I was very impressed that the administrator, the head of the school, felt that way. I felt empowered because I had her on my side. So I cannot stress enough the importance that it is, the important that it is to have a good relationship with the administration, because you will need them. And I know that in more than one occasion, they have really, really helped me. So, yeah. Anyone? Yes. So I'm not sure. So if you want to unmute, that'll be awesome. If you also share your video, that'll be awesome, because that way we can actually have a conversation and see each other. Awesome, thank you. Anyone has had any type of a situation where you felt uncomfortable, that you need some suggestions as to how to move on and deal with that?
I don't have necessarily need suggestions, but I thought I'd share a story that we had our staff encountered a couple years ago. Can you guys hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Okay, just making sure. I think it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago now, we had just amazing volleyball team. They were undefeated, and going into the region tournament, 3 of our starters plus one of the statisticians ended up getting minors at a party and were out for 6 weeks for alcohol violations and stuff. And since they were undefeated, it was just assumed that they were probably going to go to state. So it just derailed their entire season. So then when we were doing sectional coverage that year, we decided that we couldn't not acknowledge that there were suspensions that possibly, that really disappointed the entire team, except for those girls. Well, they were disappointed too, I'm sure. But so we wrote what we thought was a pretty respectful acknowledgement in the story. And I can't remember exactly how they worded it, but it was like their trip to the region finals was almost tripped up after some starters on the team were suspended due to, behavior violations or something like that. And we didn't name the players. We didn't put in their exact offenses. And it was just an amazing, well done story. And the spread was designed really great. So we put it out as part of our marketing as like a preview of what our book looked like that year. And one of the girls that was suspended was just livid. Like, she defaced the poster that we put out. Her parents were emailing me, sending me like just rude emails and stuff. And I sat down with our superintendent, our principal, and our AD, and they just wanted to get our opinion, our writer's information, our, exactly why we thought we had to mention it. And they were super supportive. And they said, okay, well, you've done everything on your end and we'll back you. We just needed to make sure we knew all of the facts. And since then, I felt super supported from my administration. I never have an issue that I feel like they're not going to back me. And I think that that's a luxury that I have that unfortunately a lot of other advisors don't feel that. But like you said, I think having a great program depends a lot on how supportive your administration is of you. And if you burn any bridges, it's not going to be good. So, yeah.
Yeah. And when you're saying don't burn any bridges, every time my kids feel like they want to reply to something or say something that it's going to affect the program, I always tell them that, yes, they will leave the school, they'll graduate, and they don't have to deal with any of the administration or anyone else anymore, but I stay. and I still need to have a good relationship with all these people. If you want the yearbook to be successful, it's really important to have good relationships all over the school. And if they do something to tarnish my relationships, then the entire program pays for that. So yeah, always, it's all about building relationships and establishing trust. Yeah.
I had a story I wanted to share, if you don't mind.
Please.
Hi, my name is Mike Chesno. I'm at Mariner High School in Cape Coral, Florida. I'm lucky enough to have a supportive administration, so I definitely would agree with you all there. But I just, this story I wanted to share because I feel like what Kevin was saying, it's not a matter of if, when, and even if you're really careful about everything you do, there's always a parent out there or somebody out there that's, you know, flies off handle. And my example is my principal came in to show me a flyer that we put out about selling books, and we used a group shot of some students, you know, just kind of throwing like peace signs. And anyway, one of them was doing this.
Mike, you're breaking up a little bit. You're breaking up a little bit. I don't know if you're too far from the microphone.
Okay, sorry, is it a little better now?
A little better, yeah.
Okay. But anyway, there were some hand signs in the photo, and the parent that received the flyer, rather than speaking to me, rather than speaking to the principal, went straight to the school superintendent at the district level to complain. And it turns out that this, you know, hand sign, basically she was saying, you know, why do you promote gangs, you know? And it turned out that this hand sign was actually, you know, a school spirit thing with the Tritons, and they were just showing the Triton symbol. And so my principal, you know, had talked about it, obviously. He's like, you know, be careful about group photos. And I kind of, you know, at that point, any kind of group photo that had like hand symbols, and I was really cautious of myself. You know, it's just an example of, you know, you do everything right, and there still can be issues.
With that in mind, how do you guys handle situations when we go to press and we know that even though we think we have control over everything, chances are that something just was missed by, you know, you as the advisor, by the editors, a photograph, a word. Is there any type of solution that you have, or any type of communication that you hand out whenever you are going to be distributing the book and you find out that there's something that it's not appropriate or something that should have not been there?
You just honestly, you have to take it out of the hands of the students, and being that you're the adult, you got to put it on yourself. Just got to own it. You know, it's always going to be something, you know, minor that you're going to miss. We're all human. You know, there will never ever be any such thing as a perfect yearbook with absolutely no mistakes. You just have to make sure that everything is school appropriate. And if there is a mistake, then it's like grammar. Maybe it was a exclamation point or something missed, you know. Because the yearbook is a official publication. I've had situations where a couple of police officers came down to the yearbook room like, hey, we need to find this student. We need a couple of yearbooks. You know, that it's a professional, you know, publication. So always make sure. I'm blessed because my wife is an English teacher by trade. So any article, any picture, anything before I turn it in, she used to be a yearbook teacher too. So I always make sure she looks over everything because she got them good English teacher eyes, you know. So I know everybody's not in that situation, but your best friend in your school, yeah, you're going to have a copy editor, but the best friend in your school will be they're cool with the English department, because somebody in the English department will overlook your stuff for any mistakes to make sure that all your T's are crossed, all your I's are dotted, any photos that you may have missed, because again, you're human, just make sure you have an extra set of adult eyes with you to try to avoid that as much as possible.
Yep.
I'd like to speak up on this matter as well. What I found when they gave me your book last year, I really questioned them because I said, listen, I've got dyslexia. And that I'm not going to be able to proof and get things proofed correctly. And my principal said, well, he will make sure the English department will take care of me. Well, we've got a waiting list of kids to get in our school because we're that good. And so the English department, they bought out their planning period. So I really couldn't find an English teacher to help me. I ended up getting a SPED teacher to help me. And I dumped it on my principal's desk. I said, you've got to proofread this. I cannot find these words that are misspelled because I don't see them correctly. And not only that, I was having internet issues in my classroom. And when I printed out PDFs for proofs, they looked different than the classroom I used because I had to borrow the graphic design teacher's classroom because I didn't have computers. I had an art room. This year, all our kids are going to have computers. Hopefully, they're going to order 10 computers for me. I think they did that will handle Photoshop because I'm teaching this as a CTE course. It's a photography class, and we put together the yearbook. So getting, your admin to back you up, which my admin did, because really nobody wanted to teach yearbook in this school, and I got it tossed on my lap. And quite frankly, it's saving my job because they want a yearbook, and art teachers are a dime a dozen, and most people, because of COVID, are laying off art teachers. Were not valued at all. So, yearbook and photography was my key in keeping my job. But the thing is, you've got to be open with your admin and tell them, I've got difficulties with this or that, and, lay it on them and they'll cover for you if they're good. And I'm lucky. I have a really good principal that backs me up.
Peter, you wanted to say something?
Excuse me?
Peter.
Oh.
Yes.
Do you want to say something? You have your hand up.
Yes, I did. I just wanted to say what I do is every time we're publishing spreads or we're creating the 2-page spreads in the yearbook is we print off paper copies and we do a lot of the editing on the paper copies, and then I keep those and actually create like a book of all the edits we have. So if there's a problem on a page, then I can go through and I can show the principal 5 or 6 different printouts and all the different changes and how the spread has changed over time. And it proves that we're editing and doing our job and being as litigious as possible. The other thing I like to do is if I see that there's an issue, is I will bring the issue to the principal only when I have 4 or 5 different options of how to solve the problem. And so principals that I've found out like to have several different options, viable options, how we can fix the problem. The last thing I would say is try to keep everything as private as possible. I've brought some big glaring errors to principals and superintendents, and they've essentially said, don't say anything. It might not come up. If it doesn't come up, let's not fix what's not broken. So those would be my suggestions.
Peter, that's really interesting you're saying that. Every time there are some mistakes that are minor mistakes and my students just go crazy and they feel like that little thing just completely messed up the entire book. It's kind of like when you go to somebody's house, everything looks perfect. But
Right.
when you are in your house, you see every single little crack, but nobody else will notice. The same thing happens with a yearbook. So I always tell them, if it's something minor, don't even bring it up, because once you point it out, everyone will see it. But if you don't say anything, people will not see it. Now, if it's something major, I think it's important to be proactive and in advance let them know that there was a mistake and that you're going to be trying to fix it. One year we had the wrong senior picture in one of the senior pages. And of course, everyone was going to notice. So even before the book came out, we gave them, we told them that that mistake happened and we apologized. And then we fixed all the books going to the senior class, not the entire schools, because it would have been just huge. But at least for the senior class, everyone had the right image. So if you can be proactive and clean up your mistakes. If it's possible, great. But if it's minor, I agree with you. If you don't say anything, no one will notice.
Good.
Yeah. Rebecca, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
So I needed this session so badly today because I got some negative feedback today after we did distribution last week. I just finished my first year, and it was a fellow teacher that was accidentally left off the staff list, and he's been there for like 23 years, and he's been texting me all day saying how angry he is and how frustrated he is. And then I've been trying to email him during classes, but then he took it to the principal today, and that's so frustrating that he just can't understand that it was a simple mistake. And Kevin, you said earlier about, we're human, and it's just, I have trouble dealing with that.
Wait, you talking about somebody that's an adult?
Yeah, he worked right down the hall from me.
Dude, it's a yearbook.
Well, it's also his son's senior year, so.
Man, get over it, man. Oh my.
Get a life.
Get a life.
A suggestion that we did in our yearbook, because we kind of had some extra pages and didn't make some sales. We filled in 3 pages, and because again, I was teaching yearbook, and I changed staff mid-year because we're on block schedule and semesters. And so what we did is we did pages of bloopers, and some of them, it started because when Interstate did our photography, and I was really not happy with them, but I still got to go with them. It's the only game in town, so to speak. But they sent a picture of a kid from here to here, his chest. Even sent a packet to his parents, so the picture of his chest, to see if his parents would buy it. And I kind of got a hold of the company, and I said, this is not good. We want a picture of his face, not his chest. So one of my students took a picture of that chest on his free time and started photoshopping a head on it and drawing on it and doing some weird stuff. And so what we ended up doing was bloopers. And I let him do a blooper of me. I let another teacher, I made sure they got permission to do teachers anyway. But they had a blast doing that. And it was a great way to end the year and fill up the last few pages. And then if you prove that, hey, we do make mistakes by doing those bloopers, it kind of lightens the mood a little bit. I don't know, just a suggestion.
I just don't know what to tell him whenever the book's already printed and I'm ready to move on to the next book.
Yeah, that's all you can do.
The principal wants me to come up with something, and I'm not sure yet whether I have a good admin or not. It's only his second year.
Tell him to get a life and grow up.
Unfortunately, people are really polarized these days and are looking for an argument.
He's very polarized.
Yeah. In which case, then don't take it personally, because the problem is his, not yours.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah, Rebecca.
Yeah, my point is that if they're going to be complaining about something in the yearbook, it means that there are other issues somewhere else, and this is a good way to escape from those other issues. So yeah, take it with a grain of salt, develop a thick skin, and move on. That would be my suggestion.
Thank you.
Has anybody ever dealt with this situation? This was real big on me about 3 years ago, and I'm glad I erred on the side of right. Now, I was in charge of Black Student Union at my school. So me being in charge of Black Student Union is just like I told them. I don't care what club want to be in the yearbook. You're a part of Atascocita High School, you're going to be in this yearbook, plain and simple. Well, our LBGT club knocked on my door after school and said, "Coach, we've never been allowed to be in the yearbook." I said, "Allowed?" It was my first year. I said, "Allowed? We've never been allowed. We would like a spot in the yearbook." I said, "As long as you are a member, a student at Atascocita High School, you're going in this yearbook, plain and simple." We had parents go through the roof. I'm talking about hate mail. What are these kids doing? I mean, it was ugly. But I had so many parents that were so supportive, because I had one parent send me a card in the mail saying, "Thank you. because their kid was on the verge, literally my right hand was on the verge of suicide because they felt so ostracized. And when we would put that club in there and gave them a page and highlight them, they said he felt like he had belonged to something and he was somebody. I mean, they hit the news. The parents got so irate. They hit the news just how the parents was acting. And a lot of parents are keyboard gangsters that where they'll send you those emails, they'll text all this nonsense to you, but as soon as the camera show up in their face, they gonna run and hide in the corner with their thumb stuck in their mouth. I mean, I'm talking like news people knocking on doors like, why would you say this about this kid? Why would you say this about this club? Why would you? And I mean, it has sparked a firestorm. But one thing I could say, the administration, superintendent, everybody was like, Evan, thank you. Because if you would have told those kids no, somebody had the right to say, you know what, this district is discriminating against me, and I would have lost my job because of discrimination. And all them parents that swearing up and down, oh, that shouldn't have been in there. They wouldn't have had a dime to give me to take care of any bills. It just would have been like, he's okay. No, you got to err on the side of right. Has anybody ever dealt with, like, not necessarily that situation, but with a situation like that, like with clubs and organizations or stuff like that?
Has anyone else dealt with a situation like that, coverage-wise?
I had a situation, not exactly like that, but we've had a few situations now where, like, transgender kids, especially like their senior year, I've had like female students that are transgender and they're transitioning and they want to appear as a male, and they wanted to know, can I take my senior picture in a tuxedo? And they asked me, I talked to the guidance counselors, I don't see a problem with that. And I think this year was the first year we did that, and I didn't get any feedback, negative feedback from parents, or at least I didn't hear about it. I didn't, maybe it made its way to administration or whatever, but I didn't hear any negative feedback about that.
Cheryl, you wanted to say something?
Yes, but it's totally off this topic.
That's okay.
And I'm not sure if this is the place to ask it or not, but this is just my second year as an advisor. How do you go about assigning roles within your staff?
You mean the editorial positions?
Yeah, the positions.
Okay. Does anyone want to talk about that? I'll be happy to mention what I do, but I would love to hear from your experience. Anybody has
you first?
Me first? Okay. So usually the way I do it is, so I was at an all-girls school for 10 years. I just started at another school, which is a co-ed school, last November. So when I was at the previous school where I knew the entire staff and I was able to know them from the first year of high school, and chances are that they'll stay with me for the 4 years. Then you kind of like develop a relationship and you kind of like start getting an idea as to who your leaders will be. But at the same time, you cannot just tell people what position they will get. You want to make sure that it's as fair as possible. But deep inside, you kind of know who are going to be your editors. So I send out application forms with a description of all the positions available. They have to apply to the position. I also interview them. So obviously the positions that are more valuable to them are the editor-in-chief position because they all want to have that in the resume. So probably that's the most sought after position. So I do ask them to submit an application with kind of like a cover letter, almost kind of like a job. And I sit with them, I interview them. One of the questions that I ask them during the interview, of course, I ask them all sorts of questions, anything from how, you're working with all of these kids who are your friends, and it'll be, chances are that at some point you will need to talk to them and ask them for their work, because it's either late, sometimes they're doing work that it's not appropriate. So how would you respond, or how would you deal with a situation like this? Because they will be in charge, so you need to make sure that they'll be able to handle that in a way that it's appropriate. And for them to know that they'll have to do that at some point. So that's one of the questions that I ask. But one of the other questions that I ask them is, all of these, the kids who are applying to this position, all of these kids truly have the capability of being editors. Otherwise, they wouldn't be applying. So I tell them, obviously, all these kids can be editors. I would love, of course, for all of you to be editors, but it's impossible. That's just the way life is. We cannot have all the same position. If for some reason you do not get the position, who do you think would be the most appropriate person for the position? And they're usually they are really, really honest as to who would they choose. And it also allows me to see how kind they are to each other. So that's one way I do it. So I kind of like already know who is going to, who's applying, and everybody has the same opportunity to apply. At the end, however, I do hold kind of like elections. So I put it for a vote. Now, the election is not the only way to get the position, because many times it might be that that's not the right person that I think would lead the publication or the yearbook. So it's a whole set of things that I'm looking for. How involved they've been the past 4 years, how reliable they are, how seriously they take it, if they go the extra mile. And then, of course, the votes. And chances are that the kids know who they really want. They also know who they want to see as their leader. So it's a combination of many things.
Yeah.
And for the most part, the voting part, it just kind of like seals the deal. So that's the way I do it. And it's worked for me always.
Sounds very fair.
And sometimes, of course, parents might not necessarily agree with my decision. It happens, unfortunately.
They'll get over it.
But they'll get over it. Absolutely. And the kids will still go to college, and they'll still lead productive and healthy lives. So
that is very helpful.
And these
very
are life
helpful.
lessons. These are life lessons as well.
I think
I like your idea on that, Anna, and I would like to add to that in that, I haven't done something like that because I've only done this for 1 year, and I did give the editorial jobs to the more advanced students.
That's what I did last year.
And that worked okay, except for the one kid that tried to dismantle the whole school system because he was a hacker. And he was into it, and he got into a lot of trouble, and now nobody wants him in a tech class. But the other thing that we did, and it was with student council, not yearbook, but it made sense because what we found with student council was only the popular kids were getting in, and so nothing was getting done. We made kids get letters of recommendation from teachers. So you can hear from other teachers, if you don't know these kids yet, if these kids are actually, valid workers and are going to do the job and aren't slackers. And so those letter of recommendations will force the kid to, go out and get that support. And if they don't have that support, then maybe they shouldn't have that position.
I agree. I think that's
a good point.
I was going to throw in that this was not my first year advising, but my first year at my current school. And this was the first time I had done not quite, I guess it was kind of a vote ultimately at the end. So it was very similar to yours where they had to apply. They had to specify what position they wanted and why, and, answer some similar questions and talk about backup ones. And then they had to talk about that with the staff. And the staff got to see their application and that sort of thing. And each staff member filled out like a chart of where they saw everybody. And, I was a little skeptical going in, but I did it because, it's my first year at this school. They know better what works than I do. And
almost, across the board, it fit what I was already thinking. So they're, they're probably in the same direction you are. I think there were only 2 students out of, 50 who were surprised.
They do what I tell them. No, I'm just playing. No, Anna said something that was very, very just true to form, Miss Cheryl. One thing that you have to understand, the kids know who are going to be their
responsible.
And the thing about it is the editors can't be a popularity contest. That's the reason why is kids tell the truth in 2 areas. We all teachers, we all know this, we all got experience in it. They're gonna tell the truth in writing and they're gonna tell the truth in private. They're not gonna tell the truth amongst everybody else because they want to fit in. But when you get them in private and when you get them in writing where they can say their true feelings, they're gonna tell you whether this person is gonna work or not. Because kids, whether teachers realize it or not, kids love and admire structure. If you look at a classroom that's hell on wheels, yeah, they're going to go there and they're going to have a good time, but they're not going to have any respect for it. But a class that's hard and challenging, they may, I don't feel like going to trigonometry today. But if that trigonometry class is structured, they're not going to allow anybody to come in there and disrupt their structure. They want the same thing when it even comes down to yearbook. They want real leaders, because kids will look for a reason not to follow directions, especially when they're taking directions from somebody that's their peers. They're going to, well, why in the world should I do this when you do that over there? How you going to tell me to put my drink up when you sitting over there drinking your Pepsi by your computer? So therefore, yes, as advisors, we always have the final say, but you do want to let your kids be involved in the process. Now, I never allow for my students to be involved with the selection process per se, like the interview wise, but I did get their opinion. And I got their opinions in private, and they would tell me, nope, I like her, but nope. And some of them be like, that's my best friend, but no, anywhere in the world, she gonna lead this second. Yep. You get those kids in private and get their true feelings, and that'll let you know who your next editors are gonna be.
Yep. Peter, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I have a club. It seems like a lot of the other advisors have a class. So I have a yearbook club. And so the kids are not motivated or held there by grades or any type of outside structure like that. So the way I do it is, of course, you try to pick the best kids. The club of kids seems to self-organize where they seem to know who the leaders are and who the people are naturally coming up. But what I do is I reinforce success. So the way my organization works is that it doesn't matter who you are, what grade you in. If you work and you produce, you get more work. If you're a senior and you don't work and you don't produce, get lost. And so anybody can be replaced at any time. I usually have a hardcore group of 4 or 5 kids. And when we get to about 2 weeks out of a deadline, I go to them and I say, you take over any spread, you finish any page, you do what you have to do, don't ask permission, do it. And so they're kind of like my finishers. And so the students kind of know that and they see how the organization works. Again, the publishing the yearbook on time and meeting the deadline is more important than anybody's feelings. It's more important than anybody's role. And so I think it's important for the students to see that, because I think that's also reality and a job. As far as a supervisor or boss doesn't want to hear your excuses, doesn't want to hear your personal stuff. They just want to say, did you get the job done? Did you do it well? And that gets reinforced. And so that's the way I kind of push it. And again, if you get that freshman or that sophomore that's very interested in the yearbook, I always pull them aside. I tell them, do this, do that. You're doing a great job. You'll do more. Look what the editor's doing now. If you want that job, here's all the things you're going to have to do in the next couple of years. Here's all the skills you're going to have to learn. And that seems to work out pretty well for me.
One thing that I do before I announce the positions, since I know that parents are so involved in the results and they also get disappointed, I usually send the parents an email when I send out the application forms. And I explain to them that applications went out, and I explain them the process as to how the position will be assigned, so that they know from the very beginning how the process is. And it's not just me selecting someone and that's that. It's a whole process, and it's an accumulation of things that I'm looking for. So that's one thing that I do. The day before I send out the results of the different positions, I only send an email to the parents of the kids who applied for the editorial positions, for the top positions. And I do not give them the names. I do not release the names at this point at all, but I just give them the heads up that the names will be released the following day, and the things that I was looking for when I was assigning the position or appointing the position to someone. And the same thing that I tell to the kids, that all of these kids, of course, are capable of being editors. But unfortunately, there's only room for 1 or 2 kids, and the decision was made according to the following points, and I list the points. And parents know their kids, after all. Parents know how much work the kids in the end actually do put into the publication. So many times they're not even surprised. Since I started doing that, since I started sending an email the night before, I rarely get a complaint from a parent. So it's just kind of like what I do with my administration. I'm trying to be as proactive as possible, so that people are always aware as to what I'm looking for and what were my expectations. So that's worked for me. So we have a few more minutes. Any other comments or questions?
How many people allow freshmen in yearbook class?
I've done that in the past, and not really on my choice. Usually, guidance counselor kind of just snuck one in, or parent really, were wanting the student to be in. Because of the transportation issue, I've kind of leaned away from that now, because you have all these freshmen, and even if they're talented, if none of them can go shoot a football game or shoot after school events, it gets hard, especially if you've got a number of freshmen, because you really need those kids that can drive and go to events. That's the only issue that I've had with it.
And that's why I asked, because I've never allowed freshmen in the yearbook class. I've always had it where journalism 1 had to be a prerequisite in order for you to be able to qualify for like yearbook or newspaper or magazine or something. Because how in the world can you know how to operate in yearbook if you don't even know what journalism is? And I always did that for anybody, but especially freshmen. And that's another thing you just hit on. That's a point that I didn't think about. Freshmen sometimes just too young to go to a football game and stay to 10 or 11 o'clock at night. A lot of they don't drive. Most of them don't drive, and mom or dad is like, I'm not getting out of bed to go get these kids. So that's why I asked, because I've never been in a situation where freshman was just forced upon me, and I'm starting in a new school, and I don't know if that's the culture yet. So I'm just wondering how to deal with it. Because at my last school, I basically told the counselors, J1 is a prerequisite. Don't give me any freshmen at all. And they listened to me, and it turned out good, but I don't know the situation I'm facing yet, because I haven't met with the counselors yet because of our situation.
Yeah, I'd be willing to make an exception. Like, I had one freshman this year that I think she'd had yearbook in middle school already, and she already had a Photoshop certification come out of middle school. Like, there's always a gem in there, and I if I would have lost her to other programs, like she got into digital design or art or whatever, I would have been really sad, because I honestly see that she'll probably be editor-in-chief one day, and she'll have 4 years of experience, a yearbook before she leaves if she sticks with it. So, be ready to make an exception, but I'd say as a rule, probably don't.
I don't. One thing that I did, or kind of the analogy that I gave my administration when I made that rule that everyone has to go through J1 before joining any of my publications, was that let's look at it as let's say we are in the soccer field and we are just about to start a game. And I have a group of seniors who are my starters and are my key players and my stars. And then at the same time, on the field, I have my rookie players who have not even ever touched the soccer ball. So everyone gets frustrated. The seniors get frustrated because they throw the ball and nobody knows what to do with it. You know, the freshmen don't know what to do with it or who to send the ball to from there. I get frustrated because I'm trying to guide the freshmen at the same time that I'm trying to tell the seniors to be patient. So everyone gets frustrated and we just do not advance. So I just told them that the rule is that everyone has to learn the game first before they can actually join us in one of the games. And it has worked. So that's the analogy. And I think it was a good way for them to get it. Peter, you also had a question?
Well,
Yeah, I was
just going to say, as a middle school advisor, I think that you don't send all of them to you guys at the high school as freshmen, but there are one or two, no more than three, that you would send that can help you identify those freshmen that you're not necessarily are going to know. And they're going to know those kids, and they may be excellent writers, photographers, or designers. And if you don't catch them as freshmen, you could lose them the rest of the time. And we had that happen to several kids at our high school. So I wouldn't say take them all, but I would definitely, if you have some that the teacher recommends from the middle school.
Peter.
Yes, I usually wait until about halfway through the year. I teach freshmen as well. So if I see one or two kids that has the characteristic that I think will make a good yearbook student, they're litigious, they get, 95s, 98s, 100s on stuff, and they're dedicated, they're intelligent, they're neat, you can tell that. Then I'll pull them aside and say, you're the exact kind of kid we could use on the yearbook, and almost personally invite them on. They always have to work underneath somebody. So it's an expectation for my sophomores, my juniors, and your seniors that they're going to be teaching these new students how to do that stuff. But some of my top yearbook students have been with me for 4 years. So I think that's very valuable. And if you get the right freshmen and you let them know, hey, look, you have to work your way onto the staff. You have to fight your way onto the staff. You can also get them to do a tremendous amount of work. They'll do paperwork, they have to type stuff in, they have to do proof. So it's a nice fit, and it's a nice opportunity for my senior members to both mentor and encourage. And it's also an opportunity for these freshmen to earn their spurs. They have to do the worst jobs and the most boring stuff in order to work their way up to actually, putting together, designing spreads and being in charge of the yearbook. So I see it as an opportunity.
Yep, Peter, I was just going to piggyback on that. I was going to say, I'm lucky enough to be able to teach Digital Design 1, and I have that as a prerequisite to yearbook, and I kind of use that class as a proving ground. And the kids, same thing. If the kids that really care about design and you can tell they're into it, I give them a personal invite before registration starts. Hey, I really would like to see you in yearbook. And I get a lot of great kids. If you've got some kind of place that you can pull them from, it's not just counselors just throwing kids at you. It's definitely a win.
Yeah, Mike, and I also have 2 or 3 other teachers in the school that know what I'm looking for. And so if they see a specific kid that seems to have those qualities, they'll give me their name, and then it gives me an opportunity to maybe, poach them as a freshman instead of them getting involved in another organization.
Yeah, I think getting suggestions from other teachers, especially English teachers as well, is really, really key. Because these are kids who have some sort of a reputation with other teachers. And if they get the recommendation, chances are that they'll be successful in your class. So yeah, definitely important to have that as well. Great. Well, I think it's almost time to go. If you have any questions at any point, my email is on the Attendify app. So send me a question. I know that there were some questions that we didn't get to, we didn't have a chance to get to, but if you have any questions at any point, please go ahead and send them to me. And I wish you much success and a wonderful year. Thanks, everyone.